Ready. I'm told we're ready. Hear you. Meeting is called to order. Would you call the roll, please, Melanie?
Chair Wonderman,
Here.
Director Alba, here, and Director Chu. Here. Yeah, for sure.
Great, thank you. Welcome to WETA's monthly Board of Directors meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and by video conference, and it's being recorded. To reduce background noise, all video conference participants will be joining the meeting in listen-only mode and will be muted during the discussion. WETA welcomes comments from the public. A public comment period will be set aside after each discussion period. Will be accepted in person and by video conference. Video conference participants wishing to speak are requested to email your name and item number you'd like to comment on to boardofdirectors@watertransit.org. If you're unable to send an email, you will be given an opportunity to speak on the item after those who have signed up. So welcome everyone, and we don't have a super long agenda today, which is hopefully a good thing, but you never know. So I'll just make a couple of comments. We had really a nice event yesterday on the Dorado, in an event organized jointly by WETA and the Bay Area Council to promote the future San Francisco waterfront route, north and south, and actually get on board on a beautiful day and see what the future holds for us potentially. And it was very exciting. And I think we drew 80 to 100 leaders, and Director Alba joined, and we had a number of members of the staff. And thank you, Lauren, for helping to put this together. And with Emily Loper of our team, and we had San Francisco Board of Supervisors, Peskin, and a lot of the transportation officials of the Bay Area, the MTC director, the community director, people from the various commissions, and so forth. And it was somewhat San Francisco focused because we were looking at a San Francisco route, but it really speaks to the potential of kind of this north-south water transit movement, as opposed to just kind of crossing over the bay. Not that we don't go north and south today, but for the future, I think it's really bright that we're going to be able to do that. So thanks, Seamus, for making that happen and scoring the Dorado for us. And I know that always takes a little bit of work to get that boat, but I thought it's a really nice vessel, and it was nice to be able to show it off, and then talk about the future of our electric system that's coming. And I had some discussion about what the potential holds for water transit. So I thought it was in order to bring a group of officials like that together, all busy people, on it in an afternoon. Really, I think it spoke a lot about the work you folks here are doing, push the agency forward. And I think there was a lot of positivity in the air. So thank you for that. It came right after a weekend. I'm sure we'll talk about our passenger counts, but clearly Fleet Week was very successful for this organization, with incredibly high attendance, and I think a lot of happiness, and people feeling really good about being out on the bay at the greatest moment to be there. So thank you for that. And I think I'll stop there. Again, I just want to thank everyone for pushing forward. Really enjoy having seen the progress that's been made over the years, and excited about the progress. Some of the things in the works to come, I think, will take us to even next level. So thank you for that. And I'll turn it over to my fellow directors, Director Alba.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Chair Wonderman just said. Yesterday's event was I think, an eye-opener to many on the many of the leaders and experts when it comes to transportation and regional transportation in in the San Francisco County and across the Bay. It's remarkable the achievements that we've been able to achieve over the past few years. And being able to speak about the short-term as well as long-term vision of electrification, decarbonization, and having a service vision and a business plan underway. And that we're freeing up funds towards some of these expansions. And these are not expansions that just make sense to WETA or San Francisco Bay Area. These are expansions that make sense to the region. And I think that's so wonderful that this community or the professionals and the experts that were on the ferry yesterday had a chance to really see what we can achieve, considering in the past that there were just 70 years ago or 60 years ago, we had 60 million people on the water on ferries every year, and that we're now at a fraction of that, but that there are opportunities to utilize this amazing and reliable waterfront and bay for more movement at a fairly affordable cost. So that was fantastic to see. So I want to also thank Director Murphy and all of the staff for being involved in that initiative.
Chair Wonderman, we did miss the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know.
Oh, that's not good. Let's, if you would, it's a little harder than usual, but join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry about that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Getting out of practice. Okay, thank you, Director Ju.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I attended the Alameda Bay Area Economic Impact or Forecast with Lauren and Catherine, hosted by the Alameda Chamber of Commerce. And that was a very nice event, very well attended, and left me feeling cautiously optimistic about the economy going forward. Also, I wanted to share that Congressman Garamendi gave WETA a shout out this morning at his Women of the Year event that was hosted in Benicia, and said he supports regional transit again. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Let me move to item number 4, item number 5. On to 5, and I'll have Seamus and team make their presentation.
Great, thank you, Chair Wonderman. A couple of announcements first. Director, you buried the lead that you were named one of the Women of the Year by Congressmember Garamendi. So congratulations on that. And then a couple of other congratulations. Our own Lauren Ghilardi was named one of the top women in maritime by Marine Log magazine. So we're excited about that as well. Her work to secure grants for this agency to create more funding from some of the formula programs for all of water transit to tap into has just really paid dividends, not just for us, but for the whole industry. So thanks for all the advocacy and coalition building that she's been able to do. And then also congratulations to the newest WETA employee, Diana Alton-Yarrow, maybe. We've been working on that. Diana joins us from Habitat for Humanity. She's WETA's newest accountant. She has a lot of experience doing accounting work for capital projects at Habitat for Humanity, and we're obviously going to be doing a whole lot more of that here. So welcome to the team. Great to have you. With that, I want to talk about a couple of updates that are listed on the agenda. One, the sea change. The sea change, thankfully, has been operating on its own power. Finally, we've gotten through the summer and the repairs that were needed have been made for the most part. And it's operating on hydrogen. We've exhausted the hydrogen from the first fueling of the sea change, and it needs to be refueled. Also good news that there's no government shutdown, which means the Coast Guard can continue to participate in the sea trial process. We've received, the vessel has received some of the certifications that it needs along the way. It needs to be refueled 3 more times in order for the official COI to be received so we can operate it. The crews will need to be trained before it receives that COI. And Blue and Gold just continues to really go above and beyond with their management of this project, managing herding a lot of cats, making sure that logistics are coordinated amongst a lot of different folks. And I'm confident now that we'll be able to have this vessel operating. And we will stay tuned on the actual date for that, but we have a real solid game plan over the next few weeks to getting through that Coast Guard process. Regional Network Management Council. This is something that we haven't talked about in a while, but the region, if you remember, went through at the very beginning of the pandemic, Blue Ribbon Task Force to talk about how transit can be organized and integrated to best survive the pandemic and come out on the other side better than it was before, so we can attract the riders back to the system. And that resulted in a transformation action plan with a number of different priorities for the region, some of them involving wayfinding, integrated wayfinding, fare integration, and some of the early steps in how fares should be integrated across transit systems is a part of that. And some of that work, WETA has embraced and moved forward with even before it's been required or expected, especially on the subject of fares, where we've aligned our fares with other transit modes operating in the same corridor. And as we all know, that's really paid off for us. The next steps in that process are going to be managed by MTC through a couple of different groups. The Regional Network Management Council is one of those. There's another committee formed by members of the commission who will be helping to manage this work as well. And MTC has hired dedicated staff. Melanie Choi, who a lot of us in the transit world know, she's worked for several different agencies, and most recently MTC is going to be heading up the Regional Network Management Group at MTC that will be staffing this effort. And the council is made up of transit operators, and all of the large operators are on the council. There are 4 representatives from the small operators. WETA is one of those, so I'll serve on the council, and our first meeting will happen in November. It couldn't come soon enough. We're all a little frustrated that it's taken so long to come together. We need to start demonstrating that we're making some improvements in this area, because we all know that 2026 transportation regional funding measure is being planned, and in order to, I think, demonstrate that we've made a lot of progress, we're going to need to demonstrate that we've made a lot of progress in these areas to prove that we're worthy of support from first the policymakers who are going to be called on to put this measure on the ballot, and then obviously the voters who will need to approve it. So looking forward to reporting back in the future about the council's activities and where that's
I would
headed.
just, say the recent study with the Bay Area News Group and joint venture Silicon Valley, which was, published, extensively, on transportation, really was troubling. And, I've never seen anything look like that before in the Bay Area. So, there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
Unless the numbers are somehow mistaken, the public's mood when it comes to investing more money in mass transit it's just not good at all. And, yesterday we were talking about how we were able to pass Regional Measure 3 a few years ago. But, according to that poll, we wouldn't come close today, with the same proposal. Now, you have an opportunity to change the mood and campaign and do a lot of things, but that's why I'm glad you're on the team.
Yeah.
So
I have a related thought about that in reviewing the news coverage about that poll. The way the questions were asked, they were very focused on commuter rail, commuter transit, and I would say if we had asked the questions differently, or if there's a new survey that comes out that is directed towards a more seamless, all day, all weekend, more coordinated service, that there might be another outcome. So I think it's very important that we look at the questions that were asked and think about, do they need to be asked in a different way? Because I think generally that we're starting to hit our new normal. And we know that a lot of people do not care about being in the office more than 2-3 days a week. And we want transit to be more than a commuter focused service. It needs to be something that you and I can take whenever we're going between two towns, or for a business purpose, or whatever it is, or for a recreational purpose out on the bay, or up and down the peninsula, or in the East Bay. We cannot focus on commuter service anymore. And so thinking about how we ask the questions and what we're trying to collect, what the data is that we collect, and not let this survey shut any initiatives down, I think is important.
Yeah, both comments are right on from my point of view. I think we do have a lot of work to do to prove that we're deserving. And I know there are more surveys being conducted that we'll learn a lot from. And some surveys that have been done in the past by MTC, the data was more encouraging than the most recent poll, not as encouraging as it needs to be, which goes back to how much work we have to do. But there's hope, I believe. There's also, I'll skip ahead just to the state legislative update. ACA 1 was approved by the state legislature, and there will be a ballot measure that will determine whether there's a lower voter threshold that's potentially available for us to have a lower hurdle for this ballot measure in 2026 would make it more achievable. So we'll see how that goes as well. You have the financial statements in your packet. You have federal and state legislative updates in your packet. If there are questions on those, we can get to them after the other two reports, but I wanted to ask Gabe and Joe to please provide a ridership and operations recovery report.
Good afternoon, board members. Joe's not here today, but I'll be covering a portion of the report. So for on-time performance, this previous month, we were at 97%, which is up 2% since August. So the system overall doing very well. Vallejo is the worst performing route, but they're in the low 90s. So we have staff looking to how to get that number back up to and for the rest of the system. And then in terms of how we're performing compared to other ferry operators, we're still outpacing Washington State Ferry and New York Ferry on that performance. And then in terms of ridership, September was a bit of a slower month, but we're still on track with our year-to-date budget projections and ridership projections. Weekends continue to be really strong, with the weekdays sort of lagging behind a little bit. Then the South City ridership, something to note, it's been flat since March, so we're kind of just seeing no. And then in terms of Fleet Week, as you heard, it was a record-breaking week. ART also had similar numbers, which was really encouraging. We did run into some challenges with boarding times and wait times and leave behind. So staff are looking at that right now, and then we're going to prepare next year for we can either adjust the service or adjust how boarding works so we get more people to their destinations. So happy to take any questions.
Just a quick question or comment. The Vallejo route is our longest route, and our reliability and on-time performance metrics are 5 minutes, right? Or based on being on time within a few minutes. And with the longer routes, I'm sure that it's harder to achieve the being on time. But that's just a comment, and I don't know. We need to have metrics that make sense system-wide. And so it's more just pointing out that it's the longest route that has slightly lower reliability or on-time performance.
I will say that so in the schedule, it's kind of built in to the schedule that the travel times from Vallejo, and there is sort of a buffer that's built in there. So I think this is not verified at all. But we preliminarily are thinking that the Mare Island Vallejo connection is kind of has some issues. So that's
Great, thank you.
We have a sense of how many folks we left behind.
Evan.
You need
A lot.
Kevin, you need a mic.
We typically, sorry, Kevin Conley, manager of planning and development. We typically don't count that, but we make an estimate, the crews on shore, so it's not a verified number. Gabe likes to say, but you know, in our Richmond scenic journey, for example, we left close to 300 behind on that first Saturday, and we left somewhere under 100 the next day. We leave people behind. We left people behind in the afternoon departures from San Francisco, but they couldn't get on board, but they could get on the next one. So we basically did manage to clear the line with that. But we always count that as a leave behind.
Are we getting a lot of, notes and, love notes from people saying you left me behind, or what's the mood of the people?
No, right? No, not that many. Yeah, people were understanding about it.
And of those, at the Richmond for the scenic route, they were able to get on the following route. No.
So that was a special excursion route. That's one of the challenges there, is that there was only one boat scheduled, and that's one reason why we're
Oh, yeah.
digging into the data and performance and seeing how we can improve for next year.
Okay.
And on the scenic route, that's an example of us trying something new that we've never done before, marketing it really effectively, in this case, so effectively that we ended up with 300 extra people that wanted to use it. And credit to Tom's team, Raphael in particular, who walked that line of 600 ferry riders that wanted to board a 300 passenger vessel, and explaining to everybody what was happening. And that they weren't likely to be able to get on, and telling them that there was another one leaving the next day. And a lot of those same people were lining up as early as 11 o'clock the next day to get on the scenic route on Sunday. So it speaks to the desire that people have to see something like that out of their trip. My favorite Tom Hall quote is, make the destination, or make the journey your destination. And we're seeing a lot of people who want to do that on our system. And so it's up to us to figure out more creative ways to do that. Certainly a year from now, when Fleet Week rolls around again, we'll be talking about how many vessels we might want to dedicate to these scenic routes, whether we want to do that just for other routes and not just a Richmond service, to spread the ridership across several vessels if we can. And a few other lessons learned that we, haven't totally digested because it just happened.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it would be useful at some time in the future to have an agenda item for the board to discuss this and take a look at what some of the, have staff generate some options and, allow people to testify and, so that we kind of go in with our eyes wide open about this and, really explore.
Will do. Okay, then we have, speaking of marketing, Tom's going to give us a
Thank you.
marketing update.
James, Chair Wonderman, directors. Just wanted to provide a brief update on our summer marketing campaigns. We last spoke about this in July. We were mid-campaign at that point, so I promised to come back and tell you how it went. Our streaming video and audio campaign, which I shared the ads with you back in July, wrapped up in, we went through into September on some of the ads to spend our budget down. Went really well, good response to that. The data details are in the staff report. This is one where it's a very high cost per impression, basically. So we spend a lot of money to get on people's TVs because we know it's a captive audience and they're looking at the ad. And there tends to not be a lot of engagement. Obviously, there are some click metrics that come through if people are watching on their laptops, tablets, or phones, but it tends to be pretty small. Less used. We also had our social media influencer campaign that had been wrapped up when we spoke in July. So I provided the data at that point. Really good engagement on that one. That was one where we were targeting specific demographics, East Bay folks, focused on Latinos, younger audiences, using TikTok and Instagram to do that, and using authentic voices in the community, not jumping in there and sharing our own message, but using folks who have a lot of followers to share our message. My favorite thing about that campaign was that we were able to give away some round trip tickets to folks who were engaged with the content. We gave away 525. One of the influencers whose TikTok went semi-viral ran out of vouchers almost immediately. So we were like, okay, well, we have some leftovers over here. Let's move over there. So we were kind of refreshing on the ticket platform every hour to see if we needed to add more, because we didn't want to lose those people who were so excited to try the ferry. So hopefully those folks have become regular riders and have told their friends all about it. And then our out-of-home display campaigns is the big splashy billboard campaign, which is really bad for engagement. There's no click-through rate or anything like that on it, but really good for getting a lot of eyeballs. And we focused on the commute market for this one. We targeted all of the billboards in the Bay Bridge approach, essentially in the East Bay, knowing that those folks were going to the city or beyond, they could potentially use the ferry. Really wanted to target it over there instead of kind of sprinkling it throughout the Bay Area. And we were able to get, these are all, of course, estimates. It's not a very exact science, counting eyeballs and cars that drive by billboards, of course, but an estimated 21 million impressions for those ads, which is a really low CPM in terms of getting the message out widely. We also leveraged those graphics on social media to show not only our riders or the general public, but stakeholders, policymakers, and other transit operators that we were out there promoting public transit to the mass market, which I think is helpful. It kind of builds a sense of pride in transit to see that, we certainly feel it when we see BART billboards. They do really great work on those. We feel it when we see our own, that we're out there trying to convince people to come over to the ferry. Especially, we're reaching people at one of the worst parts of their day when they're sitting in traffic trying to get to work, and showing them a better option. So that's our summer campaigns. We are leveraging some of those assets in terms of ongoing marketing. The animated ads in particular, we're running currently on YouTube as pre-roll and midstream ads, finding a lot of success, very affordable to put those back out there, especially since they're already created. So we're doing that, and then next month we'll have a full presentation with our consultant partners, McKinsey Communications, who will be presenting the creative concepts and some of the early visuals for our FY24 marketing campaign that we're going to do this year. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That concludes the report. Let me just go back to the Bay Area Council tour, because I meant to thank you, Chair Wonderman, for helping us coordinate that, and especially Emily Loper from Bay Area Council did a fantastic job coordinating with Lauren on that tour. Two things that stood out to me. One, it never gets old watching people's faces when they see the view from the water, and they recognize that it's just such a unique thing to have on a transit system. And then two, we tracked the travel time from Bayview to Fisherman's Wharf for a little bit beyond, and it was about 15 minutes. And I saw Andy Vermeer's face. He was really surprised that we could do that in that amount of time. And I think it just speaks to the value of that service in the future and how excited we are to move it forward. So appreciate the Bay Area Council's help with that.
I was just amazed to see, because I don't always see the San Francisco from that angle.
Yeah.
And to see all of those neighborhoods that just weren't there you know, some of which I was involved in planning at one time in one way or another. And then to actually see them there and happening and the fact that, you know, that's going to enable this whole new system to work, it's just really exciting to see that.
Yeah.
It's a whole new San Francisco out there. I had a couple of questions. So on the financials, I noticed that the year to date on bridge tolls is very low. I think it was 6% for the first couple of months. So I was wondering why do you just pull as much bridge tolls as you need for the financials? Is that how you do it?
It's not that we're getting less than we anticipated, it's
Okay.
they only pay us for what we're spending.
Okay. Done. So should we spend more? I mean, we could have spent a little more on Saturday in Richmond. And it would have been great. I had a question on the FTA grant. So, you know, we got 1%, a little over 1% of $384 million nationally, which doesn't seem fair for our state.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what we could do about that. Is there something collectively we could kind of make a campaign out of that? Because that's, you know, significant amount of money left on the table
Yeah.
going to these other states because they've got somebody on the committee, you know, that matters and that kind of thing.
We have been talking a lot about that to our delegation. We were with California Transit Association in Washington, DC as a part of their annual federal coalition trip. And we spent a lot of time talking about how poorly California's performed on all of the low and zero emission discretionary grant programs so far. It's not just the ferry related grant programs and getting our delegations help advocating, pointing that out to FTA and positioning us to, you know, to do better next time
Yeah.
around. Our coalition has been communicating with FTA staff about the grant that's currently pending. That's a really important one for this agency to move forward with the first two phases of our electrification program. It's a $12 million grant, I believe, that we have pending at FTA. And the first round from this program went almost exclusively to Maine and to Alaska.
Yeah.
We had a debrief with the FTA grant staff, and they told us that happened for quote other considerations unquote. And we pointed out that one of those other considerations in their guidance is geographic equity, and we have been pushing hard along with our members of our delegation. Congresswoman Pelosi wrote a letter recently pointing that out to FTA staff, and so we're hoping that that's meaningful when they make their decision, probably in early December.
It's not just transportation, it's happening in the DOE grants too. So, you know, I think that the administration is of the view that California is going to do it anyway. California spends a lot of money of its own money and, you know, has a big budget compared to other states. So we don't really need to, you know, worry about California. So I think we should, you know, the bigger we should really be thinking about this and you know, figuring out how to engage our own members. You know, we've got over 50 members of Congress and we've got a new senator, and you know, I think we need to make a case that we're not being treated fairly. And you know, supposedly we have good relations with the administration, but they're, you know, obviously, you know, purposely overlooking us. I don't think we got one DOE grant out of the first batch, so I think we struck a zero. And it's real money. I think let's see if I had anything else. I think that's all I had. Other questions about any of the reports?
And just a quick question here under vessel construction, the top line there, new commuter class high-speed vessels, is at 91% of total project budget. And so I was just wondering if anyone could remind me of what these two vessels are and if they're replacing or being additions to the fleet.
Good.
Good afternoon, Tim Henners, Manager Operations Engineering. So that's the Dorado and the Delphinus. I must correct me on that every time. So,
Dorado is
yeah.
already,
and those are additional vessels, boats 3 and 4 that are under construction at Maverick Marine right now are the replacement for the Bay Breeze and Swan.
Right.
We expect Delphinus to be delivered in January.
great. Perfect. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the consent calendar. There's items A, B, and C. Steve, am I allowed to ask a question about any of these items, or we need to pull it?
You should pull it.
Yeah, so let's pull, we're gonna pull item B. Any other items? Anyone else want to pull any item on the consent calendar? Other than item B, which I already pulled.
That's good.
Any in the public? Any requests to remove an item? I don't see any hands. So let's take a motion on A and C.
So move.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Could you call roll on 6A and C, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Dewey.
yes.
So on item B, authorizing pile removal agreement with City of Alameda for the Alameda Main Street ferry terminal refurbishment project. You know, just reading through it, I guess maybe it's more of a comment than a question, but I mean, you know, amazing level of complication to pull out some piles. I know it's just shocked by the number of agencies and the seriatim considerations that, I mean, the cost of removing a few piles must be just extraordinary compared to, you know, the overall simplicity of this. And I just thought, Kevin, you know, maybe you want to comment on it and the time it takes, it must take.
Yes. I mean, yeah, it's complicated, and yeah, as you can see from the memo, and a lot of credit to Chad Mason kind of managing this project, and he put together the memo, and it's the interweaving of all the agencies that really kind of creates the complexity and the timing issues. You know, it would have been nice to know we were removing this extra part at the onset of the project instead of close to construction, but that's the way it is. It is very complicated. It's very time consuming. Chad makes it look easy. Say that.
Well, it doesn't read that easy. So I was wondering, is there any, and maybe Chad's not here, so you know, is there anything that we could do to, you know, find a better path? Or is it it's just the way things are?
Pretty much it's the way things are. And, you know, I think we make a point in the memo that this is the third time we've had something similar. We had it with downtown, we had it with Vallejo. And it's just part of business. It's something we assume and we're going into any project, there will always be that unforeseen regulatory requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions about that? If not, I'll take a motion on 6B.
So moved. Second.
The motion a second. Can you call roll on that one, please?
Chair Wonderman.
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Dewey.
Yes.
Okay,
And
motion.
nobody had signed up.
And no one signed up to speak about. Okay, thank you. Item 7, authorized agreement with Uber for Alameda Main Street Terminal Rideshare Program.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Mike Cowarty with Planning and Development, and I'll be presenting item number 7, authorized agreement with Uber for Alameda Main Street Terminal Rideshare Program. As always, full report in the agenda packet. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things about what we think is a really exciting program. So this is our first direct partnership with a rideshare agency to facilitate getting our passengers to a terminal. We've been talking about doing stuff like this for the last few years. We've had a few false starts. So we're really excited to potentially see this go forward, pending your approval today. The context for this project is the closure of the Alameda Main Street ferry terminal. In a lot of ways, I think the 10-week or so closure, we've addressed the potential impacts of the service on potentially, or in particular, Alameda riders. There is the Oakland terminal that can still be accessed. That's a good option for people that have a way to get over there. For other people, particularly people that don't have access to a car that might bike or walk, the pedestrian bicycle environment getting from Alameda to Oakland is notoriously horrible. You have to go through the Posey tube. Has anyone actually done it before? I don't advise it. I did it on an accident once and it was horrifying. So, what we are looking to do, in terms of mitigating this impact to our passengers during construction, is potentially this program. And so what this program is a partnership with Uber, whereas during the hours of operation for the South San Francisco ferry service, Alameda riders or anyone in the Alameda area that would use the South San Francisco terminal can get a voucher, a discount voucher from Uber for a ride originating in Alameda and ending at the Oakland Ferry terminal. So we can set, we can configure the amount to the discount in this instance because it's mitigating a construction impact and it's a limited duration. We're actually going to cover the entire cost of the ride. But in the future, if we do this sort of program, there are all kinds of variables we can set so we can arrange the discount amount to be whatever we like it to be. In a similar way, when these Alameda Main Street, South City bound passengers return from work in South San Francisco, they can get the same discount voucher for a ride from the Oakland Ferry Terminal, specifically back to the main island of Alameda. So again, full discount. We're doing the program specifically with Uber. It's worth mentioning we did reach out to Lyft. Both companies had really great platforms for doing these sorts of things, really user-friendly interfaces. The one difference, the distinction between Uber and Lyft, and the reason why we're going exclusively with Uber for this program is we heard from our city partners in Alameda and Oakland, concerns that these sort of programs can contribute to congestion on their surface streets. And so they had a strong preference that, if we did something like this, that it'd be with a share. So the carpool type rides. Pre-pandemic, both companies offered those rides. Post-pandemic, only Uber is doing it in the San Francisco market. And so that's why we're going forward with Uber. If we do something like this in the future, we'll definitely reach out to Lyft, both companies again, give them a chance to partner with us. So the program's going to last for the duration of the terminal closure. It's going to give us an opportunity to really address the impact for a certain population of passengers, and then also see what a program like this means for the service. How well is it utilized? What kind of feedback we get from our passengers? What kind of congestion does it cause or not in the vicinity of the terminal? And that information can impact, whether we do something similar like this in the future for a construction project or, more broadly for an access strategy to our terminals. The estimated amount is not to exceed $60,000. It's very difficult to kind of predict how many people are going to use a program like this and what the value of the rides are going to be. We're confident that the actual amount of the program is going to be considerably less than the $60,000, but to be conservative, we're asking for authorization to enter an agreement for up to $60,000. So those are some highlights of the written report. While I'm up here, happy to answer any questions you have about the program or the project. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. So, I think it's a good idea to do this, and glad we're doing it. I'm a little, I guess I'm a little skittish about the ride, the necessitating it be a ride share, because I feel like that's just going to dissuade a lot of people. It's a lot of time, and Alameda is this sort of long thing, and it may not, there may not be that many different folks taking advantage of. It's really geared to South San Francisco, right? So, why, does the city of Alameda have any metrics to, I mean, why do they believe that this is going to materially impact local street congestion? If we just for 10 weeks experiment with, if you need a ride, Uber will provide it. It's also for people with bicycles. How many bicycles can can fit, right?
Yeah, that is, I think this is a baby steps situation with the city. The reality of how the Uber rideshare program works is that you request a ride and you select the type of ride as rideshare, and maybe you get matched with somebody and maybe you don't. And if you don't, then you have a solo Uber ride to the ferry terminal. And it's impossible for us to predict how many people actually get matched with somebody and how many people don't, but we're guessing that a lot of people will not be matched with somebody, and they'll catch on to that and realize that that's that will be how they travel to the terminal most of the time during the closure. We're not expecting people to bring their bikes into the Uber vehicle. There's very limited Uber vehicles that can accommodate a bike. But a lot of people travel already to South San Francisco for their jobs in these companies, and there are ways for them to get to the office buildings without a bike. So that is, I think, the biggest. We're trying to minimize as much inconvenience as we can. If there is an inconvenience that it's very hard to eliminate, it's the last mile on a bike to the office building at Oyster Point. But we think that this is something that will be over and above what an agency normally does to mitigate an impact from a construction project. It's also something that we've heard from the board is a strategy that we ought to be experimenting with. So if this proves out to be successful, and if we don't see a tremendous amount of congestion increase or even any congestion increase out of this program, and we get a report back from Uber, which we can, that show, and we'll see the data, how many people were in a shared ride versus a ride that wasn't matched with somebody. That'll give us some evidence to use for how we want to structure this in the future.
I would just suggest, after a couple of weeks, if we're just not seeing a lot of people using it, it might be because people just don't want to check the shared ride box. And then, I think we want to encourage people to do this because we don't want them to get into the habit of taking the ferry. So, I would just say if there's not a lot of usage, we might go back to the city and say, how about if we ditch that and let's see how it goes, because we're not getting, we're not getting a lot of usage.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Mike, what's the split between passengers from Oakland versus Alameda Main Street?
Yeah, so for Alameda Main Street, South San Francisco bound passengers, in terms of passengers, not trips, so it would be double. We see about 40 to 50 on average during a typical weekday. And that's about a third of the total riders, a third to maybe a quarter of the total riders.
Okay, that answers my any additional questions. I think it's worth giving it a try and exploring the limitations of a pilot. But having some kind of encouraged coordination, how do we, what's the estimated travel time between Alameda, a couple of points over to Oakland, so that people know when to pretty much request the ride, and so that to encourage rideshare and know for a fact that they will meet the ferry or be there in time for the ferry might be one way to do it as well. To just be more specific, whether it's 25 or 30 minutes before departure from Oakland or something like that, so that both Uber and the passengers kind of can guarantee that there are opportunities to share, or a couple of pickup points near Main Street, so that
I think luckily Tom and Raphael from our marketing and customer experience team have been closely involved with this project, so pending your authorization, we're gonna put together some information to our passengers, and I think that's a great suggestion. Some recommended, hey, if you're looking to use this service and you want to make sure you make the departure from Oakland, try to book. We suggest booking XX minutes in advance, and we'll get a few data points that seems sensible.
Yeah, it could even be pickup points or like pickup drop-off points on Alameda. That might make sense. So that it becomes that seamless experience rather than not knowing. So just optimizing the offering. I like it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any members of the public signed up on this one, Melanie?
No one has signed up.
Anyone wish to comment on item 7? Okay, call the roll, please.
Chair Wonderman.
Yes.
Oh, wait, we need a motion.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So
Don't call the
moved.
roll. I take it
Second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Chair Wonderman.
Yes.
Director Alba.
Yes.
Director Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, adopt fares for temporary service between Mission Bay and South San Francisco.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wonderman. I'll take this one. This is an item to adopt a fare for the other pilot that we're associating with the closure of the Main Street service. Staff is recommending that the board adopt the Zone 1 fare for this new service that we're going to be able to provide at no cost because we have the resources available due to the closure of Main Street. The Zone 1 adult fare is $4.60. The associated discounts would also be provided. This is something that we're trying, as you know, from previous discussions, because we've talked about the Pier 48.5 to South San Francisco service as being potentially a market for employees that work at Oyster Point. We know from the employers that work there that there are employees that live in this area that travel today using the Genentech shuttle, for example, down to Oyster Point, and we thought we could give them another option to be able to get to work. The times are not ideal for a commute service, and there's nothing we can do about that because it just is what it is when the vessel's available and the crew's available. There are some options that we've discussed with the employers who we're going to depend on to share information with the commuters about this service, where they might be able to take the ferry down in the morning and take a Genentech or other companies shuttle back in the afternoon, so that they don't have to wait for the ferry because the travel times are a little bit late. There's also some employees in these at Oyster Point that work later hours. And so this might be an ideal time for them. We've been thinking about other ideas for how to market this new service, and there may be some that rise to the top, but it'll be great to get a good sense of how many employees are willing to travel by ferry from this neighborhood to Oyster Point. So with that, staff is recommending that the board adopt a Zone 1 adult fare for this pilot service. We don't have anything in our fare structure that speaks to pilot services yet. We might have something more comprehensive coming in the future that would simplify how we make this work.
Thank you. Any comments from board members, questions?
What times are the services in the morning?
The morning departure at 9:45. 2 returns, 7.
Will be interesting.
Yeah.
Any members signed up, Melanie, any person signed up to speak on item 8?
No one has signed up, but just a reminder for those participating remotely, you can use the raise hand feature.
Okay, we'll take a motion then.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, call roll, please.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes,
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Hughes.
Yes.
thank you. Item number 9, authorize the filing of an application with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for $700,000 in Regional Measure 3 capital funds.
Good afternoon, board members. Jennifer Ralpog, Grants Manager. Here to present the item to file an application with MTC for $700,000 in RM3 funding for the Mission Bay Ferry Landing Project. RM3 expenditure plan includes $300 million for the ferry enhancement program, which WETA is the direct recipient of. The Mission Bay Ferry Landing Project is an eligible project under this component. And previously, the port has requested 25 million in RM3 funding for support for the project. This allocation request before you today is for 700,000 to perform engineering analysis to explore options to reduce construction costs on the existing design and examine the potential long-term future of the existing temporary terminal, which is currently located at Pier 48.5, 48.5. This phase will also include initial engineering for electrifying the terminal. The project is currently in the fiscal year 24 budget at $6 million for engineering and design, funded with RM3 funds. And with that, staff recommends filing the application with MTC 700,000 in RM3 funds for this project. I'm happy to answer any questions about the funding, and Kevin is here to answer questions about the project.
Well, as I was saying to myself, it's about 20 resolve clauses. So it seems pretty important. A question, so the 25 million, did we commit the 25 million?
I can answer that. There's no formal commitment of the 25 million. That's what has always been talked about as WETA share from RM3 with the port. There was an MOU, is it an MOU that was created that would have committed all parties to funding the project at various levels, but it was not finalized.
We never took a step like this with. We even had more resolve clauses at 25 million than
We
this.
would have had more reserve.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and is this the first $700,000 out of the $300 million pot then that is actually being committed?
Correct.
And just in defense, not in defense, but because of that, that's why you notice all the whereas clauses. This is an MTC form resolution, not a WETA resolution. And so
Yeah,
you need to take up the whereas clauses with them.
I hope their lawyers are being properly compensated for all this very extensive written materials. It's well done. So as we put these funds forward, value engineering means how do we get the price down? Is that what value engineering is?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, yes, and it also means potentially changing the design and the format of the project and potentially changing permitting, requirements. So it's deeper than just cost cutting exercise.
And is this something the Port of San Francisco wants to see us do? Are they, on board this step?
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
And they're doing this with us. It's not just WETA leading this process.
Is this going to the Port Commission in any form for them to take an action or,
I don't believe it is.
Not the request. It's possible that we may go to the port for an information item, describe what we're doing.
Yeah.
But for an MOU, once we start the work, but not for this request. It's exclusively what we do.
and the bulk of these funds goes to utilize consultants to kind of look at options, and is that
Yeah, we
what
have
we're
to-
buying?
Correct. We have to kind of engage in experts. There typically are value engineering as specialists.
Do you come back to the board for that? Or do we approve who we hire, or are they part of the list of consultants we've sort of pre-hired and then staff select them? How does it work?
That's a good question. That's still being worked out with the port because we are exploring the possibility of using, the port already has an engineering firm engaged on under contract, and we may be able to use them. And we have our own list, and we're just trying to find the most expedient way to get the work going.
So we have. Just thinking this through, so I apologize, but we have a number of interested parties in the Mission Bay neighborhood and also at Mission Rock in seeing ferry service established. So are they, party to this, or I guess they could have come to the meeting today. I told everyone yesterday on the boat to come to the meeting. They didn't come. Maybe they-
So, just playing this out in a little bit, I mean, this is an exploratory exercise on the part of the engineers and the staff. And we will potentially come out the other end of this with some ideas and some options for how to potentially reprogram the project or find cost savings measures. And then I think those are the things that need to be shared with stakeholders about the project may change in this way, or the project may, what was previously defined, we may be redefining it, or there's an option. And how does that sit with all these stakeholders? So we have to sort of take this step before we can really have a meaningful dialogue.
Is there a cost estimate for what it would take to build what we thought we were going to build by the park in front of the Chase Center?
So that exercise is kind of just got completed by the port's engineers, and hard to make an apples to apples because the project has already been redefined, and the previous project was not an electrified project.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but it's currently, we're looking at a $58 million kind of formal, just the ferry part without including the vessels or the electrification. You include those, it gets close to $80 million, and we're looking at it somewhere between 33 to $42 million funding. And again, I'm using ranges there because we are still working with the port to solidify this precise nature of those things. And this is all a work in progress.
I'll go back to my earlier comment about the FTA. I say all this or ask these questions because, I think we've said here a lot of times that, having a Mission Bay terminal was a core developmental concept for SF Ferry. So, I guess I just want to be sure that we're still committed to it. And, and that the stakeholders, that this isn't seen as a retreat as opposed to, trying to maybe find a better way. I get that, that's an awful lot of money to spend on anything. And, we've never spent that kind of money for a terminal. And, I hope we identify a path that's, that works given where we are today or will be tomorrow. So anyway, I'll stop there. I appreciate your responses.
Yeah, I really appreciate your thoughtful comments, Chair Wonderman. Out of the 6 million that is included in the fiscal year 23-24 capital budget, how much had we anticipated actually spending? Were we planning on spending that full $6 million in this capital year or in this fiscal year?
The honest answer is we did not know what we would need when we had to submit that to MTC. We hadn't redefined the project yet. We hadn't done our cost estimating. So we were really just taking a guess.
Okay, and then the 700,000 is pretty much coming out of that 6 million.
That's correct.
And thinking we're already in October, right? Mid-October. So maybe we don't spend much more than 700,000 over the next 6 months, and all of a sudden we're in next week's fiscal year, or I don't know, maybe we'll spend more. But with all of the electrification efforts that we're working on, WETA is working on in regards to our floats and infrastructure, I think it's critical that whatever we're producing for our own floats gets incorporated into the terminal design at Mission Bay. And that's your thinking as well, right?
Yeah, the focus with this effort will not be on the floats. Will be on the connection from grid to float
Okay,
at both locations.
okay,
So both 16th Street as well as the temporary terminal at Pier 48 now.
okay. Okay. And then we're looking at value. What was the word we're looking?
Value engineering.
We call it further engineering.
Okay.
But it's value engineering is another word for it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's any other way to proceed with the project without investing in this space, right? Especially if we're looking at a much higher total budget than we can contribute towards the project. So, yeah, I think you've answered all of my questions.
I mean, I think that to your question on timing, as I recall reading, it's a 14-month project.
Mhm.
So it will take us well into the next fiscal year before the project's due, unless they do it faster than
Right,
we're anticipating. So, again, this is, I think because we're electrifying, there's a lot of reason to make sure we get a lot of things right.
yeah,
So I totally get that. On the other hand, I don't want to send out the message that we're moving very slowly, and that, I've talked about this over the years, that,
yeah.
Once I asked you, how many years does it take from conception to project delivery, right? And when you answered, I said, what? And then you said, well, that's what it takes. So, anyway.
Well, a couple of other things to point out. One is we budgeted 6 million because we want to be optimistic about this project. There's no question we have to serve the Mission Bay neighborhood in some way. And we have this project, which has made a lot of progress. It's not federalized, this project, so it would complicate things even further if we were to look to federal money to fill whatever funding gaps identified. This work, I think, is in line with our optimistic thinking about the project because it's critical to coming up with a defensible project that we can come back and explain to the board that is worthy of our investment of, still scarce RM3 dollars. And the other important thing to remember when it comes to MTC and their allocation of RM3 dollars is that even though this 700,000 is available to pursue value engineering and get the project to a point where it's a defensible one that we can justify. If we're asking MTC for capital dollars to invest in construction of a project, we need to show them that the project's fully funded in order to do that. So the next step, if we're going to spend any of the 6 million that we budgeted, needs to include a plan for a fully funded project that will articulate to MTC. And we have quite a lot of work to do, and it'll take this $700,000 to do it for us to get to that point.
I don't remember how many years ago it was, but we I guess didn't take an action, but we discussed putting up $25 million, which I think at the time was a promise by MTC to put up $25 million in the anticipation of RM3 making its way through the court. And that was really predicated on the city putting up $25 million or some number like that. And then subsequently the city unput up $25 million. So here we are. And now the project costs more, which it should, because time and electrification and all of that. But I think this is a really important project that we get this done, and we're marching toward it. And I'm not saying that we're not here.
Yeah.
I just want to be really clear that from our perspective, we think this is a really important project for the future of the system and for the Mission Bay neighborhood. On the other hand, I'm concerned about us being seen because the regional measure 3 is a bank of WETA, and that somehow we're going to fully fund, projects, which really should be partnerships, right? And so, I don't want to, necessarily let anybody off the hook either, for their responsibility for making this happen. And this, City of San Francisco, put a lot of money into the 16th Street light rail line for capital. I don't remember how much it was, but it was quite substantial. And they put in 0 for water transit. And, which sort of led us to this, but then they said yes, and then they said no. So, at some point, I think we really need to revisit the big question here, right? Of, what's the nature of the partnership, or is it a partnership, right?
Yeah, I believe it is a partnership. I think, their problem is our shared problem. And we're shared in we're sharing the effort to develop a solution to it. And the city passed a ballot measure recently that had $5 million in it for this project, and it was successful. So, we have chipped away at the funding needed for this project. In fact, I think we've raised what the original budget was for this project, including the 25 million in RM3 money. If it cost what the original estimate was, we would have a fully funded project. But unfortunately, with inflationary pressures and delays, we are trying to fill that gap.
Okay. Appreciate that. Other questions from the board? Comments? Any member of the public wishing to comment on item 9?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone like to comment on item 9? Take advantage of the moment. If not, we'll take.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You have someone wants.
No, I was just gonna allow everybody to unmute just in case they, for security, I've not allowed them to unmute, but I can just in case anyone wants to speak now.
Anyone?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Raise your hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't know.
In the meantime, let's take a motion. Get a motion on item 9?
I'll move.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So any further discussion of the board, any member of the public? If not, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Your Wonderman,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Dewey.
Yes.
Got it.
All right, thank you. Item 10, public comments for non-agenda items. Has anyone signed up?
No one has signed up.
Anyone wish to make a comment on something that's not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
Oh, you drove.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yes, I even left early because even driving, I was gonna be late.
Yeah, there's some little numbers there.
Just have to make sure I don't get next to elected officials.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.